All right, we are back with another episode of the No One Told Me Hockey podcast with myself, Jack, and on the other end, my friend Chris, Prodero Hockey. But unfortunately, today we will not be having Chris join us. Fortunately for him, though, he just signed a professional contract with the Graz 99ers of the ICEHL, which is the league he played in last year. But this is for a different team this year. So he'll be out in Austria for the remainder of the season in Europe. So I'm super pumped for him. I think he's going to have a great season. I know he puts in a lot of work in the offseason. For those of you guys who don't follow him, go follow him on Instagram or TikTok at Prodero Hockey. What you see on there, he does a lot of skill drills and stuff, but he does put in a ton of work outside of what you see on there. It's actually pretty incredible. The work he's put in for many years. So I think he's going to have a good year this year. I'm pumped for him. Might be a little difficult with us doing the podcast with him in Europe, me in the Mountain West. Timing is going to be definitely difficult, but we're going to do our best to make it happen. So best of luck to him, and we will have him on next week. So I'm going to be doing this one solo today. So with that being said, I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know how long I can talk for on a couple topics here that I want to talk about. But we'll see how it goes here. So I'm just going to hop right into it. And one of the first topics that I want to talk about that I think is important for the youth hockey players, especially, and youth hockey parents that are navigating the youth hockey world for the first time, maybe haven't had a kid go through it before, or have a friend or a relative who's gone through kind of the system of playing youth hockey, but more importantly, or not more importantly, but more I don't know the word, but playing high level youth hockey. So, what I'm talking about is playing AAA hockey and how you get there. Because in this day and age, it's becoming extremely competitive to make those AAA teams and to make that jump from AA to AAA. And I think it's becoming harder and harder each year with the number of kids playing hockey and then the number of opportunities out there to play at the highest level. And I do really think that's one of the problems that hinders hockey the most is the availability to the highest level is just really small compared to, if you look at Minnesota high school hockey, so many kids have availability to play the high school, play in high school hockey and play against top level kids, which is why I think you see more kids getting Division I scholarships, making higher end junior teams out of Minnesota versus some of these other states. Where I'm from, Illinois, it's super competitive there. You only have, I think they have 5 AAA teams there now. And they have so much talent there, but there's just not enough AAA teams to house all those kids. And there's definitely good enough kids in the AA systems to be playing AAA, but it would require them to move out of state. And that's kind of something I dealt with growing up. Unlike my co-host over here, Chris, he played pretty much AAA his whole life. He had an older brother who is also a really good hockey player. He kind of went through the AAA system as well. And then their dad was a very good goalie growing up. So, they had that route of hockey. They kind of knew the steps to take, where my family, we didn't really have anyone playing hockey before my brother, which he's a couple years older than me. And so it was kind of us two doing it for the first time. So we had really no idea what AAA was up until, up until he was 16, 17 years old was kind of when we realized, okay, if you want to take this seriously, you're going to have to play AAA. So I kind of want to talk about how I went on to play, how I got to playing AAA eventually, and how it took me many tries to get there. So I guess, I started gaining interest in playing AAA once my brother played AAA for the first year. I was like, oh, well, if he's doing it, I want to do it. So I went to my first tryout. Let's see. So it was like my U14 year. So the year before midget minor starts. So I went to it with no expectations, never went to one of their spring skates or anything, kind of just went out there, told my mom I wanted to go out there and try it and get a feel for kind of what it's like. So I went out there, no expectations. And of course, I didn't make the team, which I kind of expected, right? So then the next year, my brother had played at Chicago Fury, which is a AAA program in Illinois, one like the year before, I think it was, or I think it was like a year before. So I kind of had a connection there. I kind of knew what they were about. And so going after my double A year, my U14 year of double A, I told my mom, I was like, I want to go and do spring hockey at Fear because I knew they had a good training program there with the weightlifting program and then the skating there as well. And then my brother had played there. So I was like, okay, it makes sense for me to go there. So I went and did that. And honestly, that was the year where that was the spring where I kind of started taking hockey seriously and I made some really big strides that summer. And that was when I actually started, playing in tournaments with AAA kids. And I was like, oh man, I'm right there with these kids. So I made huge strides that year. And it was definitely because one, the working out helped me so much with just being stronger on the ice, being stronger on my edges, and then skating with kids are way better than me because we were skating with U18 AAA players. Some junior college kids would go out there as well. So I was skating with a lot of higher end players that I wasn't used to skating with. So that was two very big things for me that kind of helped me catapult my level in hockey. And then the other thing was it helped me. I was a little bit chubbier of a kid, so it helped me kind of get in shape and become, really build a good endurance behind me to go out there and play some good hockey without gassing out. So I went to the tryout that year, and I knew the coaches because I'd been skating there all summer, all spring, and my brother had played for them, the year or two before. So it wasn't that coach who was picking the team or whatever. It was the U16 coach, and back then the way AAA worked for midget minors was there wasn't a U15 and U16. It was just U16, which makes it extreme even harder to make a AAA team than it already was, especially in Illinois, because the 96 birth years were insane that year. Like Chris mentioned it before, like Mission, I think probably every kid on that team went Division One, and more than a handful of them are playing pro and in the NHL right now. So that year was just extremely competitive to make it and super difficult. So being that I had skated there all summer and stuff, I knew that I was in a position to potentially make the team. I knew they had about one or two D spots open left. And I was like, okay, I'm right there. I know the coaches. I've been playing well here. They've seen me skate all spring, which is huge. So I was like, okay, I think I got this. I'm right there. Unfortunately, I remember getting the call at my house. I did not make it that year, and I was super bummed. And one of the reasons the coach actually told me this on the phone was one of the reasons I did not make the team was because the kid that he took over me was billeting a kid on the team that year. And that was pretty much the deciding factor between why I didn't make it versus why he made it. He also played on for Fury the year before, but whatever. At the end of the day, I didn't make it, and I was bummed out. But I always knew since it was my first year midget minor. I knew I had next year to play AAA as well. And I figured by that time I'd be definitely in a good spot to make a AAA team being a 16-year-old instead of a 15-year-old. So that year I played AAA, or excuse me, I played double A. And it was definitely a step down, but there was, like I said, since only they only had U16. There were so many good kids in double A that year playing Central States. Like some of the teams were essentially AAA teams. Like they could have gone out and beat some of these AAA teams in other states easily, for sure. So like just that alone, that's kind of what I'm talking about, where there's just not enough teams for the amount of good players that there are. And I saw that my first year midget minor. So then the next year, I went and I started. So I didn't go back to Fury. I decided, I don't know why I made that decision not to go back to them. I think one, because it was a super long drive to get there. It was about 55 minutes to get there. And I don't know if I was bitter or I knew that I could make a different AAA team. So I decided to go skate with Team Illinois AAA program. And that spring, so I skated with them all spring. They didn't have a workout program, but they did have a pretty decent spring skating program. So I was doing now. I was going to a separate workout guy at that point, and I was skating with them. And that year, so that spring, I had a really good spring with them. I went and played a tournament with them, and then by like the middle of the spring, maybe a little bit more towards the end, the coach pretty much said, he asked me if I wanted to play for them next year. And I said yes. So by that time, by middle of the spring, say there was 2 sessions, I think. So there was probably 100 kids out there, not maybe 60 kids, 60 to 100 kids. And they offered me a spot. So by the middle of the summer, I already knew I was playing for them. So by the time tryouts came, I think probably the whole team was practically picked. Maybe 1 or 2 spots were not filled, but for the most part, almost every spot on that team was already filled. So that year I was able to play AAA, and it was definitely a transition, and I was playing forward and D. I wasn't only playing defense at that point, so that was a little tricky. But the moral of the story that I'm trying to get at, I guess, with telling you that background is, in order to make that jump from AA to AAA, you really have to be in communication with these coaches. Going to their, like, signing up for their spring skates is, I think, one of the ways you have to make the connection. You have to go, if you're a player, go up, introduce yourself to them, first, second skate, kind of start building this relationship with them when you're going to these skates, because there's just so many kids trying to make these teams that, they're evaluating you all spring. And if you have that connection with them, he sees that you're out there playing, you're getting better, you're keeping up with these kids, you're doing well out there, he's going to have confidence to take you on his team. I think it's almost impossible to go to a AAA tryout and just show up to the tryout without any communications with the coaches beforehand. The teams are practically already picked at that point. I really don't think that's a good strategy if you are looking to take it to the next level. So the biggest thing is, if you're going to try to make that jump from AA to AAA, I think you need to go and kind of figure out a strategy of how you're going to get in front of these coaches consistently throughout the spring. If they have a spring, skating program or, skills program, I would definitely probably sign up for that. And then start building the relationship with the coach on the ice, so he feels comfortable when it does come time for tryouts, that he knows you're a guy who's committed to them and is a good kid and can keep up at that level and be a contributor. So that's kind of my story, and that's kind of what I kind of wanted to get at and try to help parents and players about making that jump. Is, you gotta be strategic about how you make the jump, because you got to be strategic about how you make the jump, because they're not just going to take you straight out of a tryout if they've never talked to you before, unless you're like insanely skilled. But at that point, they probably already know who you are. So that's kind of where I wanted to go with that. I think it was a really good lesson for me. And I still try to share this with younger kids, is if, you are trying to make that jump from whatever level it may be, is you need to be in communication with coaches, and, let them get eyes on you on the ice so they feel comfortable taking you for their team. So let's see then. Okay. So then I want to hop into this really quick. So for all you parents out there or players, I personally run a company called Line Mates Hockey, and essentially what it is we do one-on-one mentorship between college hockey players, Division I college hockey players, and your youth player. And kind of what it kind of looks like is, it's once a week. It's a one-on-one video session where they hop on a Google Meet, Skype, whatever it may be, and they cover a variety of topics. I think the 3 biggest topics that we kind of cover is player development, building life skills, and then educating them on, kind of hockey, different kind of hockey routes. And so far, we have seen great success with some of these kids. I think one of the couple biggest things that we can help kids do is, one, we do a lot of video analysis. I would say probably like 25-30% of it is video analysis with them. But it's not just our guys, it's not just our college players, you know telling them everything they did wrong, right? It's a conversation between the two, where they can both learn from each other, and they can communicate with each other to help your player kind of learn and see the game at a higher level, but it not be in a negative manner. And then the other part of it is just helping kind of your kid or your player narrow in on, what's important in hockey. Because I think a lot of times, a lot of players, especially once you get to the junior level and you're trying to get scouted by pro teams or college teams, you can kind of really lose focus on what's important in hockey. I think a lot of kids start to focus way too hard on points and not enough on their actual game outside of just that. So it really helps our player. I think it really helps these youth hockey players kind of dial in their game, realize what's important, and kind of build them into good hockey players, but more importantly, like good young men who become leaders, know how to communicate, and are, just good players on and off the ice. So if you're interested, you can either shoot me an email at jack@linemateshockey.com, or you can go to linemateshockey.com and you can either fill out the questionnaire thing, or you can schedule a call with me and I'd be glad to talk to you about it. I think it's an amazing program. We've already seen some great success with players. I think it's a great way for parents to kind of take that step back of being in their players' face, telling them all the time, kind of being in their ear all the time, like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. I think it's a great way for them to hear it from someone that isn't maybe their coaches, but it's a good way to hear it from someone who, one, they look up to and want to be like in the future. And two, if you're looking up and this is a role model to you, you're going to take that advice, a little bit easier. And it's definitely a good person for them to look up to and strive to be. So I think it's a great program. We've seen some great success already. So, yep, hit me up if you're interested in joining. We would love to talk to you and get things rolling. So that's my pitch for linemateshockey.com. Go check it out. And hopefully we can talk to a few of you and get you guys in the program. Okay, and then the other thing I want to talk about today is making that jump now from youth hockey to junior hockey, because this is even becoming more and more competitive now that social media is around, and everyone kind of can everyone kind of knows what junior hockey is, and they see the highlights and they see all the glory of it and stuff. So I think more and more people are becoming aware of what junior hockey is, and it's definitely becoming more competitive to make teams. So I want to kind of talk to you and give you kind of my background on kind of my process and how I went about making a junior team. And then I kind of want to talk about kind of what I took away from that experience. So after I finished it actually leads right after this year. So after that year playing Team Illinois U16, I remember I was sitting on the couch with my dad and we were talking. My brother had kind of just finished playing juniors, a year or two before. So we had an idea of what juniors was, kind of the steps to take, but we were still a little unclear because he had some, like, he kind of bounced back and forth from tier 3 and tier 2. So we knew that tier 2, tier 1 USHL or the NAHL was kind of the road to take. So I remember sitting with him on the couch and we're like, we knew that I wanted to play juniors. We knew that I wanted to at least play in the NAHL, if not the USHL. Like those were the two big goals essentially. So we were sitting on the couch and pretty much we were like, okay, we got to get in contact with these coaches somehow. So started doing some research, started looking. I didn't even know really. I knew like one team, Texas Tornado, back in the day of the NAHL, and I don't even think they're around anymore. That was because my brother played for them for a few games. So I was like, okay, I know who they are. Other than that, I had no idea who any of the other NAHL teams were. But I felt like that was an obtainable league for me at the time to play in within that year or the following year. So went online, started doing some research on the league, the teams, kind of what teams are losing, how many defensemen, uh, you know, where they stand in the rankings, how much turnover they're going to have for the next year. And then I started collecting emails. I started collecting every coach's email in the NAHL, and I wrote up an email and I looked back at the email a couple months ago, and it was a bad email. It was not it was okay written. It wasn't the greatest email written, but it got the job done. I would say, looking back, I could have wrote a hell of a lot better email than that, but it worked. And so I picked some teams. I didn't send it to every coach, but I think I went back and I think I picked about six, I want to say like 6 to 8 teams. And the way I picked the teams that I was going to email was based on how many kids that they had that were aging out that year, so going into college that year, or kids who were committed to colleges who were like a year out, because usually they might go in a year early. So I was like, okay, they may or may not be leaving. And I looked for teams that were losing about 3 to like 3 to 5 defensemen was kind of my range of like, okay, like they need D next year. That was kind of my range of where I would pick from teams. So I found the 5 or 6, 6 teams that I was interested in that were losing 3 to 5 D. I shot that email out, and my main goal was just to get in contact with them and have them open up the door for a line of communication. I think out of the teams that I sent it to, I'll say I sent it to 8 teams. I think out of the teams, I got 2 replies. One said pretty much, we're not looking for defensemen, I believe. And then one of them said, he gave me his phone number. He said, let's talk this week. And getting that email, I was so pumped. I was like, all right, that is exactly what I wanted to do right there, was get my foot in the door with a coach. So I talked to him. I talked to him on the phone, and he's like, are you talking to any other teams? And I told him, I'm talking to one other team. Kind of a white lie, but whatever. So what he said was, I want you to come. So this was after my season, but they were just around finishing their season. They were pretty close, and they were making the playoffs. So it was right. They might have been done. I'm not sure on the time frame, but I know I was done with my season. And he said, I want you to come to our open camp. And I'm not huge on open camps personally. I think they're a total money grab. Like, I would never, if you haven't talked to a coach or anything, I would highly suggest not going to an open camp for these teams. I think they're an absolute money grab. But since I was talking to him on the phone, he said he had seen me play in the NAHL showcase for like the AAA NAHL showcase that year for when I was on Team Illinois. So I was like, okay, I have confidence that if I go to this open camp, I can get a main camp invite. And I talked to the coach. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to this open camp, which I was super skeptical of in the first place. I did not really want to go, but since I talked to him, I was like, okay, I'm going to go. I went there. I did pretty well. I would say I did well. I didn't do great. I didn't do good. I would say I did good, but not great. But I did get an invite, and those camps I'm not going to lie, those camps are pretty brutal. Like, player wise, they are not very good camps. It's kind of some tier 3 junior players, some younger kind of AAA kids that live in the area, but it's not very good hockey. But it kind of served its purpose for me. I got out there, was able to talk to the coach once again, get some eyes on you from the coaching staff, be able to talk to the coach, build a relationship with them. So it served its purpose, right? Like, I was able to go and do that and get eyes and talk to him. So it did serve its purpose in the long run. But, he sent me, I got it, and that was out in Colorado. So I had to fly to that, and it was a whole thing. And it was, but at the end of the day, I guess it was worth it. So then I got an invite to the main camp. And at this time, I was only 7. I had just turned 17. So, I was still pretty young. Obviously, these were the first couple times I was going out and playing with kids who were 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, tier 3 kids who had been playing juniors for a couple of years, whatnot. So I went to the main camp, and I played pretty good because even though I was 17 years old, I was really physical out there. I was playing really solid D. Like, at that time, I was just hitting my stride of building my strength, getting really good edge work, seeing the game really well. So I will say, like, at that time, I was playing really good hockey. I was playing fearless out there. They had some couple off ice tests that I did really well at because I was busting my ass all spring, all summer, going to my workout guy. And then I was also skating with some pretty good kids at that time, a lot of USHL and college kids. So I was in a good spot there to play good, and I did. But at the end, so, you play your 4 games or whatever, and then you're waiting around the lobby for them to post the All-Star game lineup. And I was just going to be happy if I made the All-Star game. I was like, you know what? I'll take that as a win going to my first, actually, this is my second one at this point, but going to my second, tryout. And I ended up making the All-Star game. I'm like, oh shit, okay. Now I'm in a good spot. There's only, they pick half of those kids essentially from the All-Star game. So, okay, like, I made the All-Star game, like, whatever. And then I went and played the All-Star game, played well again, was physical, moved the puck well. And then at the end, what they do is they call in each player individually and they have the coaching. You walk in, they have the coaching staff all sitting there. You sit down. At least this is how it went for them. You sit down, you talk to them, or you sit down, and pretty much right off the bat, they tell you if you made it or you didn't make it. Fortunately for me, I walk in and they told me I made it. I was stunned. Like, I was absolutely stunned that I had made that team. Being a 17-year-old, didn't get drafted, you know, they were taking not a leap of faith, but they were definitely taking in quotes, a risk, not seeing me play that many times, but having the confidence in me that I was going to go there and do well. So I ended up making it out of the main camp undrafted. But I think what the main point I want to get out of that part of it is, once again, you have to try to build relationships with coaches. You have to have them get eyes on you multiple times so they feel confident taking you onto their team. If you're just going to a main camp without any communicate, like if you get the email for a NAHL main camp, and you just go and show up to the camp without talking to the coach or without him really even seeing you play beforehand, it's going to be a tough team to make. It's not going to be easy. I've seen it done a few times, and usually when they do make it, they go and report when they have 30 kids there and they're cut within 2 weeks, right? Most times it doesn't work that well when you just show up to the camp and expect to make it. I think you need to somehow be creative on how you're going to get in contact with these coaches, how you're going to open up the line of communication, how are you going to get them to get eyes on you, whether it be during the season or in the spring, or I don't know, at a tournament. But make sure to get in contact with these coaches before you go to their camps, preferably during the season. If you're going to a showcase where a lot of teams are going to be at, make sure to try to get some feedback on your game from these coaches if you can, and start building the rapport with them. So when you do, potentially get invited to their camps, they've seen you multiple times now, that you've talked to them. They know that you're a good kid, have good background. They're going to feel way more comfortable taking you. So that's kind of I guess that's my theme for today, is you got to get your foot in the door, build communication, and get eyes on you multiple times so these teams feel comfortable taking you in situations. But what I also want to talk about is this season. I'm just going to talk briefly about it though. So the season overall, so for being a 17-year-old, like they can't, I guess they can cut you at the beginning of the year, right at the beginning, but they told me they weren't going to. I guess they could cut you throughout the team year, but they told me you can't be traded without your permission if you're under 18. So the whole year, like, I felt like I had, in quotes, security there, because I knew they couldn't trade me, and I was living in Alaska, and I was going to school there, high school there. So it was, if they take a high school kid, most of the time they're going to keep them throughout the year. So I felt security there. But one of the things I do I don't know if it's a regret or it's like looking back now, like, hindsight's 2020, but I almost wish I would have stayed back a year, and not have gone to that team. It's easier to say now than back then, given the opportunity. But at that time, I would say they did not, it was Kenai River Brown Bears. They did not really have a track record of a good coaching staff or winning a lot of games. And I think when you're going to a junior program, especially when you're talking the NAHL, where it's kind of a toss up, whether not a toss up, but you can either go D1 or you can go D3. Like, it depends really how you do. Like, it's kind of up to you when you're there, but it can be tough to get Division I commitments out of there. Especially if you're on a team that does not win games. Like, these teams, these colleges do not go to games for teams that have 20 wins on the year. They go to the top end teams. They're going to go to these teams who are winning 40 games in a year. They're going to go scout those games. And you know what? A college coach might be at your game one game, but that's probably because the other team is a good team and they're winning games if you're on a losing team. So I wish I would have stayed back a year and taken my time and developed a little bit more, to focus on my game, kind of figure out more of kind of what player I was. but then also to kind of take a look and have more. I don't know if this would have actually, been the case or not. It's easier said than done, but had more options to pick from at the NAHL level. And maybe I would have been drafted. Who knows? Like I'll never know that. But I wish I would have been able to take some time, do a little bit more research, and understand the league more, so I could set myself up to be on one of those higher end teams. Because when you're on those higher end teams, more scouts are going to come to your games. And two, you're going to look better when you're on a better team, right? You don't have to play in the D zone as much. You don't get scored on as much. Your game is tighter because you're on a good team. You guys move the puck well. When you're on a bad team, you're in the D zone the whole time. You're gassing yourself out. Then you make bad plays. Then you're going -2 in a game. Then you're getting no points. Then you're getting sloppy. Uh, Coaches aren't coming to your game. So it's like a whole list of things, especially at the junior level is when I think it's the most important in terms of scouting, is being on a good team, because coaches are going to want to come and watch games for teams who win hockey games. And it makes you look a hell of a lot better when you're on a good team, because it's essentially the less work you have to do and you look better doing it. You make better plays. You're tighter in the D zone. You're not as gassed. You move the puck well. You get up the ice. You score. You get assists. So it's just all in all a better situation to be on a winning team, especially in junior hockey, because it does matter. Coaches come watch winning teams. They're not going to go watch a losing team unless there's a really good kid on that team. And at the end of the day, that kid's probably going Division 1 anyway. So I wish I would have taken my time and kind of understood the league a little bit more. And I don't know this for sure, but set myself up to be on in a better position, to be on a better team, a better winning team. But that's easier said than done. Looking back, I still got a great opportunity. I had many chances to take advantage of getting scouted and whatnot. So I can't complain on that front, on that end, because a lot of kids do not get that opportunity at the end of the day to play tier 2 or tier 1. And I fortunately was in a right time, right place, set myself up nicely to make a team. So, I'll take it for what it is. But just know, if you are looking to play juniors, take that time, look at the different teams that are available, understand the league, understand go look at what school or what teams are committing the most amount of kids, because there's a big difference, especially in the NAHL, from the top end team commitments to the bottom end. Bottom end will commit like 2 or 3 Division 1 kids, maybe. Top end teams will have 10 to 15, even some. So make sure to do your research, understand that. It's really important to understand that, understand the league that you're trying to get into, and then get your foot in the door. Like I said, the theme of the day: get your foot in the door and get eyes on you multiple times in order to make a team. So that's kind of what I wanted to go through today. It's a mouthful for me. Hopefully I gave some good insight to parents, players, on how to make that jump from AA to AAA, and then that jump from youth hockey to junior hockey, because I do think it's really important. I think if you do it right and you set yourself up correctly and strategically, you'll find success in making teams. So that's all I have for the No One Told Me Hockey podcast. Good luck to Chris on this season. I'm sure we'll have him on next week. I'm super pumped for him. Once again, go follow him at Prodero Hockey, and then go follow us on Instagram and TikTok. No One Told Me Hockey podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Thank you guys all for the support. We really appreciate it. Please go subscribe to us on YouTube. Trying to get to 1,000 subscriptions. So that would be huge for us. Appreciate you all, and we will talk to you all later. See ya.